What drives individuals to seek absolute power, to dominate and control the lives of millions, to impose their will on entire nations, and to revel in the subjugation of others? It's a question that haunts us, as men, separated by time but united by a chillingly similar thirst for domination, have left an indelible scar on human history. To understand their motivations is to grasp the fragility of peace and the ever-present dangers of unchecked ambition. What compels a person to pursue such a path? Is it a quest for personal glory, a deep-seated belief in their own ideology, or perhaps a combination of both? Hitler, with his vision of an Aryan master race, and Putin, with his desire to restore Russia's former glory, both harnessed the power of nationalism and propaganda to achieve their ends. They manipulated the fears and hopes of their people, turning societal unrest into a tool for their own gain. Their actions have left an indelible scar on human history, a testament to the destructive potential of unchecked ambition. To understand their motivations is to grasp the fragility of peace and the ever-present dangers of unchecked ambition. This essay aims to dissect the forces that molded these leaders, examining the historical currents, ideological convictions, and psychological complexities that propelled them to power. By delving into the crucible of their formation, we can perhaps glean insights that extend beyond the specifics of their regimes. We can learn to recognize the warning signs, to understand how societies become susceptible to such figures, and to appreciate the constant vigilance needed to safeguard the ideals of freedom and democracy. For the lessons learned from the likes of Hitler and Putin are not merely historical footnotes. They are stark reminders of the potential for darkness that resides within the human heart. The psychological complexities that drove these men to power are as varied as they are profound. Some argue that their actions were driven by a deep-seated need for control, a desire to shape the world according to their own vision. Others suggest that their rise to power was facilitated by a perfect storm of historical, social, and economic factors. By examining these factors, we can better understand how societies become susceptible to such figures. We can learn to recognize the warning signs, to understand how societies become susceptible to such figures, and to appreciate the constant vigilance needed to safeguard the ideals of freedom and democracy. The lessons learned from the likes of Hitler and Putin are not merely historical footnotes. They are stark reminders of the potential for darkness that resides within the human heart. The psychological complexities that drove these men to power are as varied as they are profound. Some argue that their actions were driven by a deep-seated need for control, a desire to shape the world according to their own vision. Others suggest that their rise to power was facilitated by a perfect storm of historical, social, and economic factors. By examining these factors, we can better understand how societies become susceptible to such figures. We can learn to recognize the warning signs, to understand how societies become susceptible to such figures, and to appreciate the constant vigilance needed to safeguard the ideals of freedom and democracy. To comprehend the forces that propelled Hitler, we must journey back to the aftermath of World War I. A defeated Germany, burdened by crippling reparations and reeling from the humiliation of the Versailles Treaty, became fertile ground for resentment and nationalism. Hitler, a decorated veteran adrift in the chaos of post-war Munich, found within this maelstrom a sense of purpose, a platform to air his own festering grievances. The seeds of his ideology, a toxic blend of German nationalism, anti-Semitism, and a belief in his own messianic destiny, found purchase in this environment of disillusionment. Hitler's charisma, honed in Munich's beer halls, proved a potent weapon, captivating audiences with his fiery rhetoric and promises of national restoration. He offered a scapegoat for Germany's woes, a path to greatness through the subjugation of others. Across time and continents, Vladimir Putin's ascent bears striking parallels to other historical figures who have risen to power during times of turmoil and uncertainty. He emerged from the wreckage of another empire, the Soviet Union, which had been a formidable superpower for much of the 20th century. His worldview was profoundly shaped by its demise, a collapse that he would later describe as the greatest geopolitical catastrophe of the century. A former KGB agent stationed in East Germany, Putin witnessed firsthand the humiliation of Soviet retreat, the dismantling of the Berlin Wall, and the rapid changes sweeping across Eastern Europe. The loss of superpower status was a bitter pill to swallow for many Russians, including Putin, who saw it as a national disgrace. The perceived encroachment of the West, with NATO expanding eastward and Western leaders celebrating the end of the Cold War, only deepened his resolve. This experience left an indelible mark on him, fostering a deep-seated resentment and a burning desire to restore Russia to its former glory and influence on the world stage. The chaos of post-Soviet Russia, plagued by economic instability, rampant corruption, and oligarchic rule, provided the perfect opportunity for a strongman to seize control and promise a return to order. Putin, adept at navigating the corridors of power, rose through the ranks with a combination of political savvy, strategic alliances, and a ruthless approach to his opponents, projecting an image of strength and decisiveness. He promised order amidst the chaos, a return to stability in the face of uncertainty, and a vision of national greatness that resonated with many Russians disillusioned by the tumultuous 1990s. Stability in the face of uncertainty was a powerful message, one that Putin used to consolidate his power and build a loyal base of support. His promise of a return to national greatness, coupled with his ability to project strength and decisiveness, would become the cornerstone of his enduring appeal and the foundation of his long tenure in power. Section 4. The Pull of Ideology. Both Hitler and Putin were driven by potent, albeit deeply flawed ideologies that resonated with a segment of their respective populations. These ideologies, while different in their specifics, shared a common thread of exploiting fear, nationalism, and a sense of historical grievance to galvanize support and justify their actions. For Hitler, it was the poisonous cocktail of National Socialism, a doctrine that combined extreme nationalism with a virulent form of racism. This belief in the inherent superiority of the Aryan race was central to his ideology, and it permeated every aspect of Nazi policy and propaganda. The concept of Lebensraum, or living space, was another key element. Hitler envisioned a vast expansion of German territory into Eastern Europe, which he believed was necessary for the survival and growth of the Aryan race. This expansionist vision was coupled with a brutal policy of elimination, targeting those deemed racially or ideologically inferior, including Jews, Slavs, and political dissidents. This ideology, fueled by anti-Semitism and a distorted view of history, became the driving force behind his regime's brutality and genocidal policies. The propaganda machine worked tirelessly to dehumanize these groups and justify their persecution. The horrific consequences of this ideology were seen in the Holocaust, where millions of Jews and other minorities were systematically exterminated. The liberation of concentration camps revealed the extent of the atrocities committed under the guise of ideological purity. Putin's ideology, while less overtly hateful, is no less dangerous. It is a complex blend of Russian nationalism, a deep-seated anti-Western sentiment, and a nostalgic yearning for the perceived stability and strength of the Soviet era. This potent brew of nationalism and anti-Western sentiment has been skillfully used to rally support and create a sense of unity against perceived external threats. The narrative often paints the West as decadent and hostile, seeking to undermine Russian sovereignty and values. The yearning for the Soviet era taps into a sense of lost greatness and stability. By invoking the memory of Soviet leaders and the perceived order of that time, Putin appeals to those who feel disillusioned with the present and nostalgic for a past that, while flawed, seemed more secure. He presents himself as the defender of traditional values, aligning closely with the Russian Orthodox Church and promoting a conservative social agenda. This alignment helps to solidify his image as a protector of Russian culture and identity, the protector of Russian interests against a hostile and decadent West. This narrative is reinforced through state-controlled media, which consistently portrays the West as a threat to Russian values and sovereignty. This narrative, skillfully manipulated through state-controlled media, has allowed him to consolidate power and justify his increasingly authoritarian actions. The media plays a crucial role in shaping public perception and maintaining the regime's grip on power. By presenting himself as the strongman who can protect Russia from external and internal threats, Putin has been able to suppress dissent and maintain control. His actions, while framed as necessary for national security, often serve to stifle opposition and concentrate power in his hands. Section 5. The Intoxication of Power. While ideology provided a convenient justification, a deeper, more primal force was at play, the intoxicating allure of power. Both Hitler and Putin, once they tasted authority, demonstrated an insatiable hunger for more. They were masters of manipulation, adept at exploiting their nation's anxieties and insecurities to tighten their grip on power. Hitler dismantled democratic institutions, crushed dissent with brutal efficiency, and built a cult of personality that brooked no opposition. Putin, while operating with greater subtlety, has systematically eroded Russia's fragile democracy, silencing critical voices and creating an environment of fear and self-censorship. For both men, power became not merely a means to an end, but an end in itself, a drug to be craved and ruthlessly pursued. Section 6. Wounds of the past, fuel for the present. To solidify their hold on power, both Hitler and Putin skillfully exploited historical grievances, real and imagined, to stir nationalist sentiment and demonize their enemies. Hitler tapped into Germany's bitterness over the Treaty of Versailles, portraying it as a humiliating diktat imposed by vengeful victors. He blamed Germany's economic woes on internal enemies, particularly Jews, painting them as parasites undermining the nation's strength. Putin similarly draws on a carefully curated narrative of historical victimhood. He laments the fall of the Soviet Union as a geopolitical catastrophe, orchestrated by the West to weaken Russia. He paints NATO expansion as an act of encirclement and portrays the West as decadent and morally bankrupt, seeking to impose its will on a resurgent Russia. Section 7. Inside the Mind of a Tyrant. While historical context and ideology provide crucial insights, we must also delve deeply into the psychological makeup of these leaders. Both Hitler and Putin exhibit traits common to many authoritarian figures: a grandiose sense of self-importance, a paranoid worldview, and a chilling lack of empathy. They view themselves as indispensable saviors, convinced of their own historical destiny, and willing to sacrifice countless lives to achieve their twisted visions. Their paranoia manifests in a constant search for enemies, both real and imagined. Dissent is equated with treason, criticism is met with ruthless suppression, and any challenge to their authority is seen as a direct threat to the very fabric of the nation.